Welcome to ACO Chess, and today we're going to be covering a game from the first Saturday GM tournament of October in Budapest from our friends at the first Saturday tournaments, Lazlo. And this is a fascinating game and with some really deep ideas. It started with e4, and we get a French advance. So all this is theory, starting with rook e1. The one thing I like about these first Saturday tournaments is they're composed of people who are ambitious to achieve something. So the games are always quite heated. They stretch and test each other to the limits. So this is a gambit of sorts, and the idea is that black is very slow in developing his king side, and white wants to take advantage of that by getting as many pieces as he can into the game before black can complete his development. So black does not bite into that. Instead, challenges the center with f6. I found a game here which continued in knight e7 with this kind of setup arising, and you can see that with the way the white pieces are set up, the open lines actually favor him. So in this game, slightly different. He goes f6, and here white takes on d4, and after knight b4, bishop b1. Here is where I feel that black made a fundamental mistake. He played the move f5. Now, looking at this position, and as a chess player, it's one thing to say, okay, good, this is a mistake because I looked at the computer and the computer said this is a mistake, and then how do I navigate my way through a game and see such a position, and why should I not play f5? What should I play, and why, what are the reasons behind my motivation behind the moves? And in this position, if we look before f5 is played, if we play f5, is it going to increase the mobility of our pieces, or is it going to reduce the mobility of our pieces? That's really the question you should be asking yourself pretty much with any move you make, after having looked at, are there any threats in this position from white? Not really, just behind in development. Okay, so are there any consequences to his previous move, which is bishop b1? And if you were to look at those two questions and then see, okay, good, my move, does it increase my mobility or does it decrease my mobility? You might be able to see ideas like, if you look at this position, there is possibilities of playing this knight to c2. So a move like queen c7 might be interesting because it might be able to force knight c2, forcing white to trade the bishop for a rook. And I think it would be very difficult for white to find a solution like rook e3, which is what I found using a computer in this position. Because now, first of all, queen takes here doesn't work because of bishop g6 check, and the rook now takes the queen. So this is what makes this tactic work, and the, let's say, knight c2 won't work here because of rook c3. So this would have been a better try though for black to play queen c7 with the threat of knight to c2, and white would need then to find rook e3, at which point after rook e3 you would have to find something like knight c6 and continue at least with the game. The move f5 kind of reminds me of the book, what was this book? It's by a Norwegian chess player, I think, or a Swedish chess player. And it goes over the idea that the moment you lose pawn levers, you slowly run out of plans. No pawn lever, no plan. I think it was the chapter or something like that. So here, by playing f5, black reduces his options for creating counterplay. by putting pressure on the e5 pawn. And after a3, he is slowly being pushed backwards. Instead of going backwards, which would have been the correct idea, he starts feeling maybe that something is wrong in the position and tries to complicate matters. So here, after a3 goes queen a3, he's using the advantage of this pin. And after rook e3, goes bishop a4, b3, bishop goes back, bishop b2, knight to d3. Of course, he's really doing a good job of trying to keep the initiative. The knight moves forward instead of backwards. But after take, and rook c1, he goes for this knight e7, which is an added mistake. But the thing is this, right? In this position, if we looked at the definition of an attack as any move which forces your opponent to move backwards, you'd quickly see that after everything is done, black is still behind in development, and over the next few moves, white slowly seizes the initiative with knight d1, forcing him to move backwards, which means that this is an attacking move. a5, a4 going back, and now knight d3, threatening knight c5. Naturally, white's moves start flowing because strategically is outplayed black. So b6, bishop a3, making sure that if you play, say, knight g6, he exchanges the dark squared bishop, which is a bad bishop for white, and it would create entry points for the white pieces onto the black position. So queen c7, knight g6, with ideas of playing knight g5, black prevents with h6. Now knight f4, already putting pressure on the squares g6 and e6. King f7, he feels this is forced, and now white goes ahead and tries to bind the black position. Black goes knight c6, bishop goes there to d6 instead of exchanging, which would help black develop. Rather, he feels that let him take, which would open the e file, and white will put pressure on this weak backward pawn, let alone the fact that squares get created in the center where knight can drop with check. So bishop e7, h5, binding the king side, and now bishop g5. Here, correctly played, unpinning the rook, the knight, and putting direct support by the queen. Rook c3, rook c8. Rook c8 here is a mistake. The problem is where black has put his king, it's not a completely safe scenario. And if you used just a simple evaluation method of the important elements in a position, king position is very, very important. And if you look at the king side, once you eliminate this bishop, there's no defender. So rook c8 was a bit of a reckless move. And after queen e3, knight takes on g5, knight g6, you're threatening the pawn on g5. And if you go back a little bit here, I think white missed this trick to do it earlier. Then play knight g. You still have the same opportunities without the drawback that he could play f4. In the game, after queen e3, king g8, black gave him another opportunity to carry out the same threat. And after f4, queen, knight here is threatening mate, and suddenly things become dire, and it becomes clear that the king side has been neglected. He couldn't take on h5 because after queen h7, king f7, he just loses this bishop. So g6, and after this, queen takes with check, rook h3 is mate. A brilliant demonstration of the exploitation of lack of cohesion, or rather the black pieces working together and being behind in development. Very impressive.